So I was involved with anti-war rallies in 1968, was it? 1970. 1970, I was involved with it, protesting against the Vietnam War. So I was a member of some groups that we were going and doing demonstrations in Washington, D.C. So I went with a group of people. I remember it was in May 1970, it was a big anti-war rally. And when I got there, I saw these people in these, saffron bed sheets. Somebody just told me something funny. On the road, he was walking with them, and the guy said, "What's with the sheets, man?" So the buddy said, "It's too hot for blankets." And I said, "Oh, okay." So, the guy liked that. So I saw these people, these saffron, dhotis, and I was just looking, and then right after that, I don't know who this girl was, but she came up to me, and to this day, I don't know who she was. And she had Back to Godhead magazines and small books and incense. So she wanted to sell me something, and I wasn't interested. And she finally said, "Oh, okay, well, I have this incense. Would you like some incense?" She was quite pushy. And she said, and I said, "All right, I'll give you 50 cents. She said, "No, $2. Because that was a long time ago, so $2 is not what it is now. So I said, all right. So I gave her $2 just to get rid of her. And she gave me a little magazine, a little pamphlet, not a magazine. It was Krishna, the Reservoir of All Pleasure, and Who is Crazy. And I got that little pamphlet, and I sat in the bus back from D.C. I was living in New Jersey. So we were going back, and it's a few-hour ride. So I was reading it, and I was just thinking, I like it, but I don't understand any of it. I was just reading it. And then it had underlines on certain, every time it said the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it was underlined like that. So I read it. I read both. Who is Crazy? Prabhupada responded to people's criticism of our movement, saying, "You guys are crazy." Prabhupada wrote the article, "Who is Crazy?" You say we are crazy, and we say you are crazy. So let's decide. Anyone who thinks they're this body is crazy. So Prabhupada wrote that powerful response to our criticism. So I read both articles, got back home, took the magazine and the incense, threw it in my drawer, and left it there for 2 years. Never saw it again. And in 1972 I met the devotees again at a different place. So that was my first encounter. So it was 2 years later that I had any exposure to anything, either a devotee or a temple or anything, after I received that. So it actually took 2 years before. So that's a good example of how things work. A certain seed was planted. I didn't want to give my $2, but I did, and I got the mercy. So sometimes we have to be a little bit, intelligent how to give people something they don't want. So that was my first contact, and then I came to a temple in 1972 in Denver, Colorado, met devotees, took prasadam, and then went back to New York, where I was living, New Jersey, New York area. And then I started to visit the temple after that. So it was actually 2 years from my first time I contacted to the books until I actually started to look into it more in a more serious way. And I think a lot of times that's the story of a lot of people. You know, how many of you had similar? You got a book or something, and then after so much time, there's something happens right away. Yeah. So time bombs. They go off in time. So distribute books. The world is looking for something. They're desperate. Society's falling apart. I mean, people in America know the economy's finished. It's in a real crunch in America. The economy is practically finished. People can't get jobs. Nobody's buying any houses. Nobody wants to take out loans. The banks are not giving loans so easily because people are not paying back any loans. They borrow money and go bankrupt, and the banks have to sell these houses, and they can't sell them. In Chicago alone, there's over 50,000 houses that are up for sale. 50,000. Nobody's buying it. Everybody's renting nowadays. The economy is really in bad shape in America. Could fall apart any day. They're keeping it together by some kind of patchwork, printing more money. Inflation is getting higher. Prices are going up. Right? Just recently, they just told me last night, there was riots here now. The government's imposing more tuition funds on the students. And Prabhupada writes in this 12th canto, he just quotes, he says, this is how material society will go. They'll just tax people to death. The government's become so corrupt, all they do is just pilfer people. This tax, that tax, this tax, this tax, this surcharge, this surcharge. Yeah. And people are just paying all their money to, paying for all this stuff. And people will become frustrated. Because this economy is a false economy. It's based on exploitation. Anything that's based on exploitation is bound to collapse one time or another. So, yeah, preaching is better than ever. It's better than ever right now. Because there's a need. When we first started our movement, in the 1980s in America, our movement took a real dive in the 1980s because people were not so much interested in spiritual life. In the 1980s, it was a big, huge industrial explosion in jobs and stuff. People were just headlong into the American dream. It was so strong. Preaching was difficult in the 80s. The 90s showed something different. Now the 2000s are completely different. Everything's falling apart. So, good time. It's always a good time. A better time. And if you're determined, just go out there with the determination that, prayer, praying to Srila Prabhupada for his guidance, determination to reach these people with these books. We're simply instruments for the previous acharyas in any aspect of our service, but especially we can realize that when we're out in book distribution. Simply trying to be an instrument for Krishna's mercy, that's all. Krishna wants to give it, pure devotees want to give it, we want to satisfy them, we also want to give it. Any other questions? Okay, Hare Krishna. Bhagavananda Prabhu can counteract all my offenses.